The morning fog hung thick over London as Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell received the urgent call that would change everything. Her phone buzzed at exactly 6:47 a.m., pulling her from a restless sleep. The voice on the other end belonged to Commander Hughes, head of the Royal Protection Unit, and his tone carried an unusual weight of concern. "We have a situation at Tom Parker Bowles' residence in Belgravia," Hughes said, his words measured and careful. "I need you there immediately. This cannot wait for normal procedures." Sarah had worked with the Royal Security Team before, but never had she heard such urgency in the commander's voice. Tom Parker Bowles, Queen Camilla's son from her first marriage, had always maintained a relatively quiet profile despite his royal connections. He was known more for his food writing and television appearances than any scandal or controversy. As Sarah dressed quickly in her standard detective attire, she wondered what could possibly require such immediate attention. The Parker Bowles family had always been cooperative with security protocols, and Tom's house in the upscale Belgravia district was regularly monitored as part of standard royal family protection measures. The drive through London's early morning traffic gave her time to consider the possibilities. Had there been a break-in, a security breach, or something far more serious? The commander had been deliberately vague, which in itself was concerning. In her 15 years of police work, Sarah had learned that when senior officials avoided details, the situation was either highly sensitive or potentially explosive. Arriving at the elegant Georgian townhouse, Sarah immediately noticed the unusual number of unmarked vehicles lining the quiet street. Royal protection officers stood at strategic positions, their presence subtle but unmistakable to trained eyes. The morning joggers and dog walkers of Belgravia went about their routines, unaware that something significant was unfolding behind the pristine white facade of number 47. Commander Hughes met her at the front gate, his weathered face showing signs of stress that she had rarely seen before. Behind him stood two other officers she recognized from previous royal security operations, both wearing expressions of barely concealed shock. "Before we go in," Hughes said quietly, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard, "I need you to understand that what you're about to see must remain absolutely confidential until we determine our next steps. This isn't just about family privacy. There are potential national security implications." Sarah nodded, her detective instincts now fully alert. In all her years of service, she had never heard the commander speak of national security in relation to a domestic incident involving the royal family's extended members. As they approached the front door, Hughes continued his briefing in hushed tones. "Tom Parker Bowles contacted his security detail at approximately 4:30 this morning. He was distressed. When our officers arrived for what they assumed would be a routine check, they discovered something that defies easy explanation. The front door, painted in classic British racing green, stood slightly ajar. Through the narrow opening, Sarah could see expensive Persian rugs and antique furniture that spoke of both wealth and refined taste. But there was something else, an unusual stillness that seemed to permeate the air, as if the house itself was holding its breath. "The family members are all safe," Hughes assured her as they paused at the threshold. "But what we found inside has raised questions that go far beyond simple domestic security. Questions that may reach the highest levels of government." Sarah felt her pulse quicken as Hughes pushed the door open wider. Whatever lay beyond that threshold had clearly shaken experienced royal protection officers, men and women who had seen everything from terrorist threats to family scandals. As she stepped across the threshold into the marble-floored foyer, she had no idea that she was about to encounter something that would challenge everything she thought she knew about the royal family's carefully maintained public image. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 7 times, its deep resonant notes echoing through rooms that held secrets far more complex than anyone could have imagined. The interior of Tom Parker Bowles' residence revealed itself room by room, each space more puzzling than the last. Sarah followed Commander Hughes through the elegant hallway, past family photographs and expensive artwork that seemed untouched by whatever disturbance had occurred. The house maintained its sophisticated atmosphere, yet something fundamental felt wrong. In the main living room, they found Tom Parker Bowles himself, seated in a leather armchair with his head in his hands. At 54, he usually carried himself with the confident bearing of someone comfortable with his position in society. Today, however, he looked utterly defeated. His normally well-groomed appearance was disheveled, his clothes wrinkled as if he had slept in them. "Mr. Parker Bowles," Sarah said gently, introducing herself. "I'm Detective Inspector Mitchell. Can you tell me what happened here?" Tom looked up with bloodshot eyes, his face pale with exhaustion, and something that looked remarkably like fear. "I honestly don't know where to begin," he said, his voice hoarse. "When I tell you what I found, you're going to think I've lost my mind." Sarah exchanged glances with Commander Hughes, who nodded encouragingly. In her experience, witnesses who prefaced their statements with concerns about their own sanity were often the most credible. People fabricating stories rarely expressed such self-doubt. "Start from the beginning," Sarah suggested, taking out her notebook. "What time did you first notice something was wrong?" Tom ran his hands through his disheveled hair and took a shaky breath. "I came home around midnight last night from a dinner party in Chelsea. Everything seemed normal when I arrived. The security system showed no breaches. The staff had left at their usual time and the house was exactly as I'd left it that morning." He paused, clearly struggling with how to continue. "I went to bed around 1 o'clock, but I couldn't sleep. There was this feeling, like someone was watching me. I know that sounds paranoid, but I've lived in this house for 8 years and I know every sound it makes." Sarah continued taking notes, watching Tom's body language carefully. His distress appeared genuine, and there were no obvious signs of deception in his manner or speech patterns. "Around 3 in the morning, I heard voices coming from downstairs," Tom continued. "At first I thought perhaps the security team was conducting a routine check, but the voices were different. They weren't speaking English, or at least not any language I recognized." Commander Hughes leaned forward slightly. This was clearly the first time he was hearing this particular detail. "I grabbed my phone and crept to the top of the stairs," Tom said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "What I saw in my own living room was impossible. There were people in my house, but they weren't ordinary people. They were dressed in clothing I'd never seen before, carrying objects that looked like they belonged in a museum." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, though she maintained her professional composure. "Can you describe these people in more detail?" Tom stood up abruptly and began pacing, his agitation increasing. They were tall, extremely tall, with pale skin and unusual facial features. Their clothes appeared to be made of materials that seemed to shimmer in the lamplight. And the objects they carried, they looked like ceremonial items, possibly ancient artifacts. "How many people were there?" Sarah asked. 7 or 8, I think. It was difficult to count because they kept moving in and out of my field of vision. They seemed to be arranging these artifacts around the room in some kind of pattern. It looked almost ritualistic." Commander Hughes cleared his throat. "Mr. Parker Bowles, you mentioned you contacted security at 4:30. What happened between 3 o'clock and then?" Tom stopped pacing and turned to face them both. "I watched them for over an hour. I was too frightened to move, too confused to think clearly. They never looked up toward the stairs, but somehow I felt they knew I was there. When they finally left, they didn't use the doors or windows. They simply vanished." The room fell silent except for the distant sound of London traffic. Sarah found herself struggling to process what she had just heard. In 15 years of police work, she had encountered many strange stories, but this was unlike anything in her experience. "Mr. Parker Bowles," she said carefully, "when you came downstairs after they left, what exactly did you find that prompted you to call security?" Tom walked to the fireplace and pointed to the mantelpiece. "Look at the dust patterns on these surfaces. Look at the way the furniture has been moved. These artifacts they were arranging, they left impressions in the carpet that are still visible. And there's something else." He led them to a glass display case near the window. Inside, Sarah could see what appeared to be ancient jewelry and small ceremonial objects that definitely had not been there when the house was last photographed for security purposes. "These items," Tom said quietly, "were left behind. I've never seen them before in my life, but somehow they feel familiar. And when I touch the case, I get the strangest sensation that my family's history is far more complicated than anyone has ever told me." Sarah approached the glass display case with scientific curiosity, her detective training taking over despite the bizarre nature of the situation. The artifacts inside were unlike anything she had encountered in her career. Each piece seemed to emanate an otherworldly quality that made her skin tingle as she drew closer. The largest item appeared to be a ceremonial crown or headpiece, crafted from a metal that shifted between silver and gold depending on the angle of observation. Intricate symbols covered its surface, symbols that seemed to move slightly when viewed directly. Smaller items included rings with stones that pulsed with their own inner light, and what looked like ancient scrolls bound with materials she couldn't identify. "Commander Hughes," Sarah said, "we need to document everything before we proceed further. This scene requires specialized analysis." Hughes nodded grimly. "I've already contacted our forensics team, but I wanted your assessment first. In 30 years of royal protection, I've never encountered anything remotely similar to this." Tom Parker Bowles remained near the fireplace, watching their examination with a mixture of fear and fascination. "There's more," he said hesitantly. "When I first approached that case this morning, I heard something. A voice, but not from any person in the room. It was as if the artifacts themselves were communicating." Sarah looked up sharply. "What kind of communication?" "Words in English, but about things that don't make sense. References to bloodlines and ancient obligations. Something about a covenant that spans generations." Tom's voice trembled slightly. "The voice mentioned my mother specifically. It said that her marriage to the king had activated something that had been dormant for centuries." The implications of this statement hit Sarah like a physical blow. If there was any truth to what Tom was describing, they were dealing with something that could affect the stability of the monarchy itself. She had sworn an oath to protect the crown, but how could she protect it from something she didn't understand? "Mr. Parker Bowles," she said carefully, "I need you to tell me exactly what this voice communicated to you. Word for word, if possible." Tom closed his eyes, clearly trying to recall the experience precisely. It said, "The bloodline has been restored to its rightful place. The Parker Bowles lineage carries obligations that transcend mortal understanding. What was divided must be reunited. The crown and the ancient throne must become one." Commander Hughes had gone pale during this recitation. "Tom, did this voice indicate what these obligations might involve?" "It mentioned something about a gathering. A convergence of bloodlines that hasn't occurred for over 300 years. And it said that my mother's position as queen would serve as a catalyst for events that would reshape the understanding of royal authority." Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling heavily on her shoulders. Whatever was happening in this elegant Belgravia townhouse had implications that reached far beyond a simple security incident. She needed to contact her superiors, but she also needed to understand more about what they were dealing with. "The artifacts," she said, turning back to the display case. "Did the voice indicate their significance?" Tom nodded slowly. "According to what I heard, these items are proof of legitimacy for claims that predate the current royal family by centuries. They're supposed to establish connections between British royalty and much older sources of authority." "Older sources?" Hughes asked. The voice spoke of alliances that were made in prehistoric times, agreements between human rulers and entities that existed long before recorded history. It suggested that the British Isles have always been governed by more than just human political structures. Sarah felt her rational mind rebelling against what she was hearing. But the evidence before her eyes was undeniable. The artifacts were real. The disturbance to the household was documented, and Tom's distress was clearly genuine. More importantly, the security implications were staggering. "We need to secure this location completely," she decided. "Nothing enters or leaves without documentation, and we need to contact historical experts who might be able to shed light on these artifacts." "There's something else," Tom said quietly. "Before the voice stopped communicating, it gave me specific instructions. It said I needed to arrange a meeting between my mother and certain individuals who would be making contact soon. It emphasized that this meeting was not optional, and that refusing would have consequences for the entire royal family." Hughes immediately reached for his secure communication device. "I need to alert the palace security immediately. If there are threats being made against Queen Camilla—" "Wait," Tom interrupted. "It wasn't presented as a threat. It was presented as a summons. As if my mother has responsibilities she's not aware of, inherited through her marriage to the king. The voice suggested that these responsibilities come with protections as well as obligations." Sarah studied the artifacts again, noting details she had missed in her initial examination. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, clearly the work of master artisans, but the materials and techniques used seemed to defy conventional understanding of historical metalwork and jewelry creation. "Mr. Parker Bowles," she said, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before answering. Based on everything you experienced last night and this morning, do you believe your family is in danger, or do you believe you've been chosen for something? Tom was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the mysterious artifacts. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a note of resignation mixed with wonder. Honestly, Detective Inspector Mitchell, I think both might be true. The secure conference room at Scotland Yard had been hastily converted into a command center for what was rapidly becoming the most unusual investigation in recent royal protection history. Sarah sat across from a collection of experts that Commander Hughes had assembled with remarkable speed. Dr. Margaret Thornton, a medieval historian from Cambridge, Professor James Whitfield, an expert in ancient British archaeology, and Dr. Elena Vasquez, a specialist in comparative mythology. The artifacts from Tom Parker Bowles's residence lay carefully arranged on an examination table, each piece photographed and documented from multiple angles. Under the harsh fluorescent lighting of the conference room, they seemed even more mysterious than they had in the elegant surroundings of the Belgravia townhouse. I've consulted every database available to academic institutions, Dr. Thornton said, removing her reading glasses and rubbing her tired eyes. These artifacts don't match any known British royal regalia or ceremonial objects from any period in recorded history. The metalwork techniques appear to be sophisticated beyond anything we understand from pre-medieval Britain. Professor Whitfield nodded in agreement. The symbolic inscriptions are particularly puzzling. They incorporate elements from Celtic, Saxon, and even earlier Bronze Age symbolic systems, but arranged in ways that suggest knowledge of connections between these cultures that mainstream archaeology has never established. Sarah leaned forward, studying the photographs spread across the table. Are you saying these artifacts are forgeries designed to confuse us? No, Dr. Vasquez interjected. If these are forgeries, they represent a level of historical knowledge and craftsmanship that would require decades of research and resources available to only the most advanced institutions. The materials alone would cost hundreds of thousands of pounds. But more importantly, Dr. Thornton added, some of these symbols appear in manuscripts that are housed in private collections that have never been digitized or made publicly available. Whoever created these artifacts would need access to source materials that even most academics have never seen. Commander Hughes, who had been listening silently, finally spoke. What you're telling me is that either we're dealing with extraordinarily sophisticated hoaxers, or these artifacts represent genuine historical objects from periods and cultures we don't fully understand. That's essentially correct, Professor Whitfield confirmed. But there's a third possibility that we need to consider. These artifacts might be genuine, but from historical traditions that were deliberately concealed or suppressed. Sarah felt a chill run through her as she considered the implications. Suppressed by whom? Dr. Vasquez opened a thick folder filled with photocopied manuscript pages. Throughout European history, there are references to royal bloodlines that claim authority from sources other than divine right or conquest. These bloodlines allegedly maintained connections to pre-Christian spiritual and political systems that coexisted with, but remained separate from, conventional monarchy. You're talking about secret societies, Hughes said skeptically. Not exactly, Dr. Thornton corrected. We're talking about parallel systems of governance that may have operated alongside official royal structures for centuries. Systems that would become active only under specific circumstances or when particular bloodline combinations occurred. Sarah remembered Tom's account of the voice mentioning his mother's marriage to the king as a catalyst. What kind of circumstances would activate such systems? Professor Whitfield consulted his notes. According to the fragmentary references we've found, these parallel systems would engage when certain bloodlines converge through marriage or inheritance. The Parker Bowles family has ancient roots in the West Country, and some genealogical records suggest connections to pre-Norman noble families. But surely these connections would be well documented, Hughes objected. You would think so, Dr. Vasquez agreed. But many family records were deliberately obscured during various periods of political upheaval. The English Civil War, the dissolution of the monasteries, even the 2 world wars all provided opportunities for certain families to conceal their true historical significance. Sarah's phone buzzed with a secure message from the palace. She read it quickly, her expression growing more concerned. Queen Camilla has reported unusual dreams over the past 3 nights. Dreams involving ceremonial gatherings and ancient responsibilities. She initially dismissed them as stress-related, but given what we've discovered, the dreams could be significant, Dr. Vasquez said immediately. In many traditional cultures, dreams serve as communication methods for spiritual or ancestral guidance. If these parallel governance systems are real, they might use such methods to contact their contemporary representatives. Dr. Thornton was examining one of the artifacts under a magnifying glass. There's something else we should consider. This crown-like object has mechanisms built into it that I initially took for decorative elements. But looking more closely, they appear functional, as if the crown is designed to do something beyond simply being worn. What kind of function? Sarah asked. I can't be certain without more detailed analysis, but the internal structure suggests it might be designed to channel or focus some form of energy. The crystals embedded in the metal aren't just decorative. They're positioned in ways that would create specific resonance patterns if activated properly. Commander Hughes stood up abruptly. I need to contact the palace immediately. If Queen Camilla is being influenced by external forces through dreams or other means, we have a security crisis that goes beyond anything in our protocols. Wait, Professor Whitfield said urgently. Before we treat this as a security threat, we need to consider that we might be witnessing the activation of legitimate historical systems. If these artifacts represent genuine royal authority from ancient British traditions, interfering with the process could have consequences we can't predict. Sarah looked around the room at the assembled experts, each brilliant in their field, all struggling to apply conventional analysis to something that defied conventional understanding. What you're suggesting is that we might need to allow this process to continue in order to determine whether it represents a threat or a legitimate royal responsibility. Exactly, Dr. Vasquez confirmed. But with careful monitoring and documentation, if Queen Camilla is being contacted by representatives of these ancient systems, we need to understand what they want and whether their intentions align with the stability of the modern monarchy. The room fell silent as everyone contemplated the extraordinary situation they were facing. Finally, Sarah made the decision that would shape everything that followed. We proceed with caution, but we proceed. I want continuous monitoring of both Tom Parker Bowles and Queen Camilla, and I want these experts available for immediate consultation as events develop. Little did any of them know that those events would develop far more quickly than anyone anticipated. The emergency call came at 3:17 a.m., exactly 24 hours after Tom Parker Bowles' initial contact with security. Sarah was pulled from a restless sleep by the urgent tone that indicated a critical incident involving royal family members. Commander Hughes's voice was tight with controlled tension as he delivered. The news that changed everything, Queen. Camilla has disappeared from Clarence House, security. Cameras show her leaving her private quarters at approximately 2:45 a.m., but she bypassed all normal security protocols. She appeared to know exactly where every guard was positioned and moved through the building as if following a predetermined route. Sarah was already reaching for her clothes as Hughes continued his briefing. More concerning is that she wasn't alone. Security footage shows her accompanied by 3 individuals who somehow entered the building without triggering any alarms or appearing on perimeter cameras. These individuals match the description Tom gave us of the people he saw in his residence. Where is she now? Sarah asked, her mind racing through possible scenarios. Unknown. The tracking devices and her personal items were left behind in her room, along with a handwritten note addressed specifically to you, Detective Inspector Mitchell. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the early morning air. Addressed to me? How is that possible? The note was written on paper that doesn't match any stationery in the royal household. The handwriting has been confirmed as Queen Camilla's, but the content suggests knowledge of our investigation that she shouldn't possess. 20 minutes later, Sarah stood in Queen Camilla's private sitting room at Clarence House, surrounded by royal protection officers who looked as bewildered as she felt. The room showed no signs of struggle or distress. Everything appeared normal except for the conspicuous absence of the Queen and the presence of a cream-colored envelope bearing Sarah's name in elegant handwriting. With gloved hands, she opened the envelope and read aloud the message that would reshape her understanding of everything that had transpired. Detective Inspector Mitchell, by the time you read this, I will have begun a journey that has been planned for far longer than my marriage to Charles. The responsibilities I inherited through our union extend beyond those of a traditional queen consort. I am compelled to attend a gathering that occurs only when specific bloodline convergences align with celestial events that happen once every 3 centuries. The individuals who visited my son Tom were messengers, not intruders. They brought proof of my family's ancient obligations and the tools necessary to fulfill them. The artifacts you have been studying are genuine symbols of authority that predate the current royal family by millennia. I write this note to assure you that I am in no danger, but rather am fulfilling responsibilities that ensure the continued protection and prosperity of the British Isles. The gathering I must attend will establish renewed compacts between human governance and the older powers that have always influenced our land. Do not attempt to locate me through conventional means. I will return before the next new moon with knowledge that will benefit the crown and the country. The artifacts in Tom's possession are gifts that establish his role as liaison between these ancient systems and the modern monarchy. Trust in the process, Detective Inspector. Some traditions transcend human understanding, but serve human welfare nonetheless. The letter was signed with Queen Camilla's full formal signature, but below it was a symbol that matched one of the inscriptions on the mysterious artifacts. Commander Hughes read the letter again silently before speaking. Either Queen Camilla has been influenced by forces beyond her control, or we're witnessing something that challenges everything we thought we knew about the British monarchy. Sarah studied the handwriting carefully. Her training in document analysis told her the letter was genuine, written without duress and composed by someone in full command of their faculties. The reference to celestial events suggests we should consult astronomical records. If this gathering is tied to specific cosmic alignments, we might be able to predict timing and possibly location. Dr. Thornton, who had been summoned to Clarence House, examined photographs of the letter with professional interest. The symbol beneath Queen Camilla's signature appears in several medieval manuscripts I've studied. It's associated with ceremonies that supposedly took place at ancient sites throughout Britain during significant astronomical events. What kind of ceremonies? Hughes asked. Renewal ceremonies. Rituals designed to maintain spiritual and political balance between human communities and the natural forces that influence prosperity, protection, and governance. Many ancient cultures believed that royal authority required periodic reaffirmation from sources beyond human politics. Sarah felt the pieces of an incredible puzzle beginning to form a coherent picture. You're suggesting that Queen Camilla hasn't been kidnapped or coerced, but rather summoned to participate in genuine royal responsibilities that most people have forgotten exist. That's exactly what I'm suggesting, Dr. Thornton confirmed. And if that's the case, interfering with the process could have consequences that extend far beyond the immediate safety of one person, even if that person is the queen consort. Professor Whitfield arrived with astronomical charts and historical calendars. I've been researching the celestial reference in Queen Camilla's letter. There is indeed a rare astronomical alignment occurring over the next 72 hours. A convergence of planetary positions that happens approximately every 300 years. During the last occurrence of this alignment, he continued, historical records show unusual activity throughout Britain. Unexplained gatherings at ancient sites, temporary disappearances of noble family members, and subsequent periods of unusual prosperity and stability. Hughes paced the elegant room, struggling with decisions that fell far outside normal royal protection protocols. What you're all telling me is that we should allow the queen consort to remain missing while she participates in ancient rituals with unknown entities at undisclosed locations. What we're telling you, Sarah said carefully, is that we may be witnessing the activation of legitimate royal responsibilities that have been dormant for centuries. Queen Camilla's letter suggests she'll return within days with knowledge that benefits the crown. And if she doesn't return? Hughes asked. Sarah looked out the window at the London skyline, where the first hints of dawn were beginning to appear. Somewhere in the ancient landscape of Britain, forces were stirring that connected the modern monarchy to traditions older than recorded history. Then we'll deal with a crisis unlike anything the royal family has ever faced, she said quietly. But based on everything we've learned, I believe she will return. The question is, what will she bring back with her? 48 hours had passed since Queen Camilla's disappearance, and the strain was beginning to show on everyone involved in the investigation. Sarah had established a command center at Scotland Yard that operated around the clock, monitoring reports from across Britain for any unusual activity that might indicate where the mysterious gathering was taking place. Tom Parker Bowles had become an invaluable source of information, as the artifacts in his possession began exhibiting new behaviors. The crown-like object now emitted a soft pulsing light that seemed to correspond with specific times of day, while the ancient scrolls had begun displaying additional text that appeared gradually, as if being written by an invisible hand. "The new text is providing coordinates," Tom reported during the morning briefing. "Not modern map references, but descriptions of landscapes and landmarks that Dr. Thornton believes correspond to sites in Scotland and Wales." Dr. Thornton had been working tirelessly to decode the emerging information. The descriptions match several locations associated with ancient royal inauguration ceremonies, places where British kings and queens were crowned or received blessings from spiritual authorities that predated Christianity. "Are we talking about druids?" Commander Hughes asked, his skepticism now mixed with grudging acceptance of the extraordinary circumstances. "Possibly," Professor Whitfield replied, "but the reality is likely more complex. These ancient systems probably incorporated various spiritual and political traditions that we've lost track of over the centuries." Sarah studied the latest photographs of the artifacts, noting how their appearance continued to evolve. "The crown is definitely activating more fully. Look at these crystal formations. They're growing larger and more complex. It's as if the object is preparing for use." Dr. Vasquez pointed to symbols that had appeared on the scrolls overnight. "These markings suggest that Queen Camilla's participation in the gathering isn't just ceremonial. She's apparently being prepared for a specific role that will require her to make decisions affecting the future relationship between the monarchy and these ancient systems." "What kind of decisions?" Sarah asked. "According to what I can decipher, she'll be presented with options for how the ancient protections and responsibilities will be integrated with modern royal duties. She could choose to maintain the traditional separation between public monarchy and secret obligations, or she could establish new forms of transparency that acknowledge both systems." Tom looked up from the artifact that had been providing him with increasingly detailed communications. "There's something else. I'm being told that my role as liaison isn't temporary. The Parker Bowles bloodline apparently carries specific genetic markers that make family members suitable for ongoing communication with the ancient systems." "Genetic markers?" Hughes asked sharply. Dr. Thornton consulted her genealogical research. "It's not as far-fetched as it sounds. Many noble families have maintained detailed bloodline records for centuries, and some of those records include references to inherited spiritual or mystical abilities. What we're learning suggests that these abilities might have practical applications in governance." Sarah's secure phone buzzed with an urgent message. She read it quickly, her expression brightening for the first time in days. "Reconnaissance teams are reporting unusual light phenomena at 3 different ancient sites across Britain. Coordinated activities that suggest large gatherings are taking place simultaneously." "Multiple gatherings?" Professor Whitfield asked with interest. "According to the reports, there are significant activities at Avebury in Wiltshire, the Ring of Brodgar in Orkney, and Bryn Cellidu in Wales, all sites associated with ancient ceremonies and all currently experiencing unexplained light displays, visible from several miles away." Tom's artifact had begun glowing more intensely during this conversation. "I'm receiving new information," he announced. "The gathering is reaching its culmination phase. Queen Camilla is apparently being presented with the formal terms of renewed compact between the Crown and the ancient guardians of Britain." "Guardians?" Sarah asked. "Entities or forces that have influenced British prosperity and protection for millennia. The compact being renewed establishes their continued support for the monarchy, in exchange for acknowledgement of their role and certain ceremonial obligations." Dr. Vasquez leaned forward intently. "This could explain Britain's remarkable historical resilience. Despite numerous invasions, wars, and political upheavals, the British Isles have maintained unusual stability and prosperity compared to most European regions. You're suggesting that this stability has been maintained through supernatural means?" Hughes asked. "I'm suggesting that it may have been maintained through partnerships between human leadership and forces that we don't fully understand," she corrected. "Partnerships that required periodic renewal to remain effective." Sarah felt her phone vibrating with another urgent message. This one made her heart race with relief and anticipation. Satellite imagery is showing movement at all 3 sites. Large groups of people appear to be dispersing from the ancient monuments. The gatherings are concluding. Tom's artifact suddenly blazed with brilliant light, then gradually dimmed to its previous subtle glow. The communication has changed, he reported. I'm being told that the ceremony was successful, and that Queen Camilla will be returning soon. But she won't be returning alone. What do you mean? Hughes demanded. She'll be accompanied by representatives who will establish ongoing communication between the ancient systems and the modern monarchy. The age of complete separation between public and private royal responsibilities is ending. Dr. Thornton gathered her research materials with obvious excitement. If this is genuine, we're witnessing a fundamental shift in how the British monarchy operates. The integration of ancient and modern authority systems could strengthen royal legitimacy in ways we can't yet comprehend. Sarah looked around the command center at the team of experts, security officers and analysts who had worked tirelessly to understand an impossible situation. We need to prepare for Queen Camilla's return and for whatever changes her experience will bring to royal protocols. But first, she added, studying the slowly dimming artifacts, we need to prepare ourselves for the possibility that everything we thought we knew about British history and royal authority is about to be revealed as only part of a much larger and more extraordinary story. Outside the windows of Scotland Yard, London continued its normal rhythm, unaware that the monarchy that had guided the nation for centuries was about to enter a new phase of its ancient and mysterious evolution. The return of Queen Camilla to Clarence House occurred at precisely dawn on the 3rd day, as the first rays of sunlight painted the London sky in shades of gold and amber. Sarah and Commander Hughes were positioned in the courtyard when 3 figures emerged from the morning, mist as if materializing from the air itself. Queen Camilla walked between 2 companions who were unlike anyone Sarah had ever encountered. Tall and graceful, they moved with fluid elegance that seemed to defy normal human locomotion. Their clothing appeared to be woven from materials that shifted color with each step, and their faces held an ageless quality that made determining their age impossible. But it was Queen Camilla herself who commanded attention. She radiated a presence that was both familiar and completely transformed. Her posture carried new authority. Her eyes held depths of knowledge that hadn't been there before. And around her neck hung a pendant that pulsed with the same gentle light as the artifacts in Tom's possession. Your Majesty, Commander Hughes said, stepping forward with visible relief, we're grateful for your safe return. Queen Camilla smiled with warmth that encompassed both her traditional graciousness and something entirely new. Thank you, Commander. I know my absence caused concern, but it was necessary for the future security of the realm. She gestured to her companions. Allow me to introduce Lady Morwen and Lord Calum, representatives of the Guardians' Council. They will be establishing permanent liaison with the Crown to ensure the continued protection and prosperity of the British Isles. Lady Morwen stepped forward, her voice carrying musical tones that seemed to resonate in the bones of everyone present. Detective Inspector Mitchell, your dedication to understanding rather than simply controlling this situation has been noted with appreciation. The transition we are beginning requires humans of wisdom and flexibility. Sarah felt a strange sensation as Lady Morwen spoke, as if layers of reality were becoming visible that had always been hidden. Your Majesty, can you help us understand what has transpired and what it means for the monarchy going forward? Queen Camilla nodded thoughtfully. For centuries, the true governance of Britain has involved partnerships between human rulers and the ancient forces that shaped these lands. These partnerships were maintained in secret to protect both the Crown and the general population from knowledge they weren't prepared to accept. Lord Calum spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the weight of immense age and authority. The marriage between Queen Camilla and King Charles created a bloodline convergence that activated dormant responsibilities. The Parker Bowles lineage carries genetic markers that enable communication with our realm, while the Windsor bloodline provides the political authority necessary for effective collaboration. What does this mean practically? Commander Hughes asked, his security training demanding concrete information. It means that the British monarchy will now openly acknowledge its relationship with the Guardians' Council, Queen Camilla explained. Certain royal ceremonies will incorporate ancient protocols that ensure the continued protection of the realm. The prosperity and stability that Britain has enjoyed for centuries will be maintained, but with greater transparency about the sources of that stability. Tom Parker Bowles arrived at Clarence House as his mother was speaking, the artifacts from his residence carefully transported in secure containers. When Lady Morwen saw them, she smiled with obvious pleasure. The integration tools have served their purpose well, she observed. Tom, your role as primary liaison is now officially established. You will receive ongoing training and communication protocols and will serve as translator between our realm and the human government. Sarah watched as Tom approached the artifacts, which began glowing more brightly in response to his presence. Will the public be informed about these changes? Lord Calum considered the question carefully. Gradually and carefully, the human population will be prepared through increased acknowledgement of ancient British traditions and heritage. Archaeological discoveries will be announced that establish historical precedent for the relationships we are formalizing. Cultural education will expand to include awareness of the spiritual dimensions of royal authority. Dr. Thornton and the other experts were summoned to witness the formal establishment of the new protocols. As they watched, Lady Morwen and Lord Calum conducted a brief ceremony that transformed the artifacts from mysterious objects into functional tools of governance. The crown-like object was placed on a specially prepared pedestal in Queen Camilla's private study, where it would serve as a communication device for ongoing consultation with the Guardians' Council. The scrolls were bound into a formal treaty document that outlined the renewed compact between human and ancient authority. The rings and other jewelry became symbols of office for Tom and other family members who would serve in liaison roles. The changes will be implemented gradually, Queen Camilla assured the assembled security team. Royal schedules will incorporate time for consultations with the Guardians' Council. Certain state ceremonies will include ancient protocols that acknowledge the full spectrum of royal authority, and a new department within the palace will be established to manage ongoing relationships with the ancient systems. Sarah found herself appointed as the first director of ancient affairs, a position that would require her to bridge the gap between conventional security protocols and the extraordinary new realities of royal protection. Her team would include the academic experts who had proven themselves during the crisis, as well as specially trained personnel who could work effectively with both human and guardian representatives. As the formal ceremonies concluded and the new protocols were established, Sarah reflected on how profoundly her understanding of reality had been transformed. The British monarchy, which she had sworn to protect, was revealed to be part of a governance system that extended far beyond human politics into realms of ancient wisdom and supernatural protection. Standing in the courtyard of Clarence House, watching Queen Camilla consult with beings who seemed to embody the very spirit of the British landscape, Sarah realized that her career in royal protection was entering a phase that would require skills and knowledge that no training academy could have provided. But as she observed the obvious care and respect with which the Guardians treated the royal family, and the genuine wisdom that Queen Camilla had gained from her extraordinary experience, Sarah felt confident that the monarchy was entering not a period of danger, but a new era of strength and legitimacy that would serve the British people for generations to come. The age of hidden partnerships was ending, and the age of acknowledged collaboration between human and ancient authority was beginning, and Sarah Mitchell, detective inspector turned director of ancient affairs, would help guide the crown through this remarkable transformation of one of the world's oldest and most respected monarchies.